But we had to hit on this, Danny, because this feels like a sea change as far as the college landscape in the Commonwealth of Virginia and in the DMV fan base pool. Blacksburg is certainly not DMV adjacent, but there are tons of Hokies fans listening in and around Virginia right now. And what a hire for Virginia Tech. ESPN's Pete Thamel reporting they are finalizing a deal to hire James Franklin as their next head coach. Tech, which has not won 8 games since 2019, which has not won double-digit games since 2016. They have fallen on really hard times post Frank Beamer. Justin Fuente came in here, and they were a 500-ish team at the end. They go to Brent Pry, and they have gone 3-8, 7-6, 6-7, and now 3-7 after he started 0-3 and was blown out. Interim coach Philip Montgomery's 3-4. They played in the Military and Duke's Mayo Bowl the last 2 years.
Yeah, 2 bowl wins in the last 9 years for Virginia Tech. The leftovers of Frank Beamer's program, they went 10-4, 9-4, and haven't been that good since.
And by the way, the bowls are not good bowls.
No, you're talking about a decade where Virginia Tech, in their minds and in fans' minds, has simply not been Virginia Tech. You're losing the Camping World Bowl. You're winning the Belk Bowl. This is not where they think they should be.
So in a cycle where LSU needs a head coach and Florida needs a head coach and maybe Lane Kiffin's jumping from Ole Miss, and there's going to be some real star power in terms of programs needing new head men, for them to be able to go out there as an also-ran. I mean, JMU has overtaken them in the state of Virginia in terms of football over the last few years. Virginia this year in the ACC has overtaken them. They have been one of the really inept schools in terms of football over the last several seasons. They've fallen on really hard times. For them to land James Franklin, who is the butt of jokes and everybody makes fun of because he can't win the big game, I think is a gigantic win. Like, there are 2 different conversations can be had. James Franklin at Penn State had run the race and had lost enough of those huge games where, as good as they were, the best in the conference, not Ohio State or Michigan, and they just couldn't get over the hump against the Buckeyes and the Wolverines. And in top 5 and top 10 games for years, they always seem to come up small. And it felt like while Franklin got that program into the top 15, the top 10, maybe he either wasn't the guy to get him over the hump to win national championships. Maybe that's not what they are anymore. But you understand why he's out of a job there. But there's a big difference between that and him being anything other than a gigantic win for Virginia Tech. Penn State had started to dominate Tech in recruiting in the Tidewater and in the 757. They were getting all the players in Virginia in that area that Tech used to get. Franklin can now help build that back up, recruit those players, and you go to the ACC where you're not going to have as many big games to worry about losing. You know, it's NC State when they're hot, or Virginia or Miami for a year, or what have you, Clemson if they're up with Dabo. But this is not the SEC or the Big Ten.
It's not even close.
You're leveling down. You could get them back into the ACC title game conversation soon. They could be a fringe playoff team year in and year out. As you just saw a week or 2 ago, Virginia was ranked and in the playoffs. Virginia Tech could absolutely be back there with James Franklin. I think this is outkicking their coverage. They're landing a 9 right now as someone that you thought was going to get like a 6.
Yeah, this is a slam dunk for them. Talking about Virginia Tech. And it requires Virginia Tech fans to acknowledge where they are. If you do, then you go, yep, this is great. Because James Franklin, we've got enough data now that sort of proves it. You reference it, GP. He is not the guy to get you over the hump, quote unquote, which is that national title, that college football final. Even though they were in the college semifinal last year, I think there was more fortuitous draw than it was. They were a legit contender, but still, you won 13 games last season. That's not a fluke. They've been double-digit winners, a lot of 10-win, 11-win seasons on his resume, talking about James Franklin. He's not the guy to get you over the hump to win the Natty. If you need to travel to get to the hump, James Franklin's the guy. Ask Virginia Tech. Ask Penn State from when he came in and took over. Virginia Tech has to do a lot of work to get to the hump. This is the guy for that. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times it all sort of depends on where your program is. This is true with any sport, with any even pro sports. Sometimes you need the guy before the guy that makes the organization serious, that establishes professionalism, that sort of makes it so that the next person to come in can take this team and put them over the top. Think of the guy before Phil Jackson, the guy before Steve Kerr, who actually happened to be Mark Jackson. You make it professional, and then maybe one day, if you're that good for that long, you find the white knight to come in and take you over the top. But right now, Virginia Tech needs a lot of cleanup. You touched on it. The path is there. If you can hang with Clemson, Florida State some years, Miami some years, the ACC is not the Big Ten. Full stop, period, end of story, nor is it the SEC, where he has had some success talking about Franklin. This energetic hire, a guy that's anxious to prove that Penn State was wrong and he was right by building another program that was, it's not that far removed from some pretty significant glory, is the perfect hire for him to kind of go do it, because you mentioned the access, how easy the road is. I put that in quotes.
Well, there's a multiverse
and for the school,
where Penn State didn't start 3-3 and was in the conversation right now for the national championship. Handful of plays go differently and their season goes differently. And instead, you go 3-3 and he gets fired and it's disgrace, right? I mean, people are making jokes about you. But they were 13-3 last year. They're a college football playoff team that gets, to a Fiesta Bowl and wins and then eventually loses in the Orange Bowl. They're 10-3 the year before that, 11-2 the year before that. How about 11 or more wins 5 times for him? In fact, 6 times with Penn State, dating back to 2016. And we're talking the biggest bowls that exist, where they're getting, and they're in those conversations as a national championship caliber team. Now, his problem at Penn State, the undoing for him was quarterback. He could not solve the riddle. He just couldn't figure it out, whether it's Sean Clifford or Drew Allard or all these dudes that came through there. They could never get a top-of-the-line QB. Think about the guys that have been drafted, or haven't been, frankly, at the top of the board out of Penn State. The rest of the roster, he did a pretty good job with. They've gotten a lot of dudes into the NFL defensively on both lines, skill position guys, wide receivers, running backs, but he hasn't been able to find a quarterback. So that's going to be the challenge. It's what he's going to have to figure out at Tech. But you're leveling down in competition significantly, and as one of the biggest fishes swimming in whatever, water the ACC is, if the joke used to be, you don't belong in these waters, don't worry about that. The ACC ain't the same as the Big Ten. It's not the same as the SEC. Ask Maryland, by the way. I thought they were past being able to get a coach like Franklin, to be honest with you. I mean, the recent program, Justin Fuente from Memphis, Brent Pry, who comes over there and has the run that he just did as their head coach. Are you kidding me? For them to get James Franklin, I would not have thought that Franklin would take the Tech job. I would have thought he could have done better. But as I think about it, it might actually be the perfect bounce-back job for him.
And I think it is.
If it goes well in 5 years, maybe you could go get an SEC or a Big Ten job.
Well, it makes sense for all the parties involved. So Virginia Tech, to me, had been relegated to that, to the Justin Fuente, Brent Pry tier. In other words, maybe you got to guess right on a Signetti from James Madison before the rest of the country figures out that the guy's great. You got to find that next great guy. Maybe he grows into something, right? You weren't able to grab the established name unless something like this was happening, especially in this hiring cycle, by the way, Jeeps. I mean, you mentioned it already, but this is the most high-profile jobs available that I can remember in this new era of college football, with all the buyouts, and there's some really, really good guys who are going to have their pick of the litter when it comes to the gigs they want. I didn't know that Virginia Tech would be able to do this until I started to think about it from Franklin's perspective. This place that's football crazed, with as passionate and enthusiastic a fan base as you're going to find, that it's what they've got down in that part of southwestern Virginia. You got a great sort of built-in bit of fan support. The school's behind it. It's their bread and butter. It's the ACC. The path is there for recruiting. The path is there for consistent winning. You get to rebuild yourself. You build yet another program. Thinking about what he did at Vanderbilt that got him the gig at Penn State. And all of a sudden I kind of went, that path actually makes sense for him, right, in terms of his career. Use each other. If you're Virginia Tech, you're damn right. If you're James Franklin, I think so too. Everyone can have their eyes wide open here and say, you build something for us, we'll all benefit, and then maybe go on your merry way, as you said, to an SEC school or back into the Big Ten or whatever.
Yeah, if you're a Tech fan, you want to hop in to discuss the news, you can call us now at 800-636-1067. I had gotten to a point where I thought they were either going to have to get cute, hiring one of their own. My buddy who goes to Tech kept saying he wanted Michael Vick, and I'm like, no, you don't. Look at the success, is actually the lack of success he's having right now as a coach. But you had guys like D'Angelo Hall, who I love, throwing their name into the hat going, hey, if we're doing this, Deshaun Jackson's a head coach, let's follow Deion Sanders' way of operating thing. Why couldn't I be the head coach there? I was a DB's coach for the Panthers, and That didn't sound like the craziest thing in the world to me, the way college football is going. But to be able to go out and get James Franklin. Now, will there be a few people that make a couple of jokes? Sure. They're misinformed and they're ridiculous. He's not getting the job at LSU or Florida. He's not getting the job at Ole Miss if Lane Kiffin leaves, these top 5 type programs. I mean, Virginia Tech should be thrilled, and I'm sure that program feels this way, to go get James Franklin.